Good evening and welcome to Across the Pitch. We're the soccer show for people who think Joe and Cleats was a movie starring David Spade.
What? Hang on. No.
Would that be a sequel to Joe Dirt? Is that
Yes, that's right. But you're going, mate.
That's exactly where I was going with
Have
it.
you insulting our guest already? He's not even said a word.
I mean, I don't know how to respond to that other than thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
I mean, we are down in the dirt where we belong, but sorry to bring you down to our level there, mate.
Oh no, it's great to be here, guys.
Now, of course, the David Spade movie is Joe Dirt, but Joe and Cleats is actually joining us today, and if you read The Athletic at all, then you're familiar with his writing. He covers the MLS and USL, and most recently he has started his brand new website, which is risingtactics.com. And I gotta say that personally, I am obsessed with this website. If you are into Phoenix Rising and you want to know not only how many goals they're scoring, but how they're scoring them, how they're setting up, who's going to be coming into the lineup, what the formation is going to be, that Joseph is your man. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the show, Joseph.
Yeah, no, I mean, thank you for the compliments. That's really kind of you. I appreciate, and it still kind of blows my mind that people read the stuff that I write. So
Yeah,
I'm very blessed to be here.
Mate, it's a great read. I love it. I think I've learned more about football through reading your stuff than I ever have before. And I take that as a huge compliment because I know a lot about football, but when it comes down to tactics, I'm a little bit lacking. I'm more about I'm a narrative sort of guy, like who's the bad guy, who's the good guy for this week. Yeah, you know what I mean? This is fantastic stuff. Yeah, I love it.
Well, that's great to hear. I appreciate it.
Well, tell us a little bit more about where we can find your writing and where we can find you on Twitter and all that, because I know by the end of the show that our listeners are going to be scrambling to read everything that you put out, because like Aaron said, tactics are not my strong point, and I have certainly learned more about the tactical end of the game from reading you than anybody else out there.
Yeah, so you can find my writing. I mean, you guys did a great job introing me already, but you can find my writing at The Athletic. I have had the opportunity to contribute there, and that's been a great experience for me that I've been enjoying over the last year or so. So you can find me there. You can find me at risingtactics.com. That'll just be my Phoenix Rising specific coverage. The Athletic has some Phoenix Rising stuff, but a lot of other stuff as well. But if you just kind of want the all-encompassing feed, you can follow me on Twitter at Joe and Cleats or on Twitter at Rising Tactics or both. Just do all those things. Why don't you?
There you go.
Yeah, give him a follow on all his social media accounts for sure. And Joe, I just got a question for you, not related to anything soccer, but on your Joe and Cleats Twitter profile, it says that you're an apple pie fanatic, and I'm a dessert person myself. So I just got to ask, where is the best place to get apple pie in Phoenix?
From my grandma, if that's an option for you guys. No, but yeah, both my mom and my grandma make absolutely outstanding apple pie. That's a highlight of the holiday season. I've yet to find any pie here in Arizona that quite compares to that. So, if you find any place that you think is up there, shoot me a message or find it somehow and let me know, because I got to try it.
No, I got one for you. There's that place up on the I-17 there, just before you hit Black Canyon. What's that called? Rock Springs or something? They say it's the best pie in Arizona.
Oh,
so you're saying they're liars.
I am, yes, indirectly, I suppose. But, if we want to have a taste test, I'm happy to contribute to that in some way or another.
Oh.
Yeah,
we might have to do something like that, maybe like a pie eating contest for charity or something like that. Yeah. We could get something like that going.
Don't get me wrong, Rock Springs Cafe is good. I don't know if it's the best pie I've ever had, but it's pretty good stuff.
Sorry, my dirty mind leads me astray again. Anyway, how do we get on the pie? Oh yes, because your grandma's great pie. What else do you enjoy in your downtime, Joseph?
I I like to read. I like to watch a lot of soccer, play music, kind of a lot of those standard things that I think a lot of people enjoy doing. But yeah, usually when I'm not writing about soccer, I'm watching some other soccer games as well. So that's or playing any of those things. I enjoy all of that.
I think we need to ask where your love of soccer comes from. Like, it seems like this you're a young fella. You're probably half my age. You've probably got as much football knowledge as... Oh, no, wait, hang on a second. I've got as much football knowledge as you've forgotten. How does one get into this? Do you know what I mean?
So my background, I think, is probably similar to a lot of other Americans who have gotten caught up into the game. It's sort of, and I was watching on TV during, I don't even remember which major tournament it was, but a number of years ago, and just kind of got hooked. I'd always been a fan of, the other classic American sports as well, football, basketball, baseball, and I was always into the strategic side of those games as well. So it was never quite as much the narratives that caught my attention, but it was more so the strategy and how different plays were drawn up in the NFL and in the NBA and things like that. So soccer having more players and more freedom and more strategy, that kind of really caught my attention. And so at a certain point a number of years ago, I just was hooked, and I don't even remember the specific day or game or anything like that, but it sort of just grew from there. So that's where it all started for me, and it's only continued to become more of a passion of mine since then.
Awesome.
Besides Phoenix Rising, who are some of the other clubs that you support around the world, and what are some of the leagues that you're most interested in outside of the USL and MLS?
So every time I tried, growing up and now as well, every time I tried to become a fan of another team, not from Arizona, which is, I grew up here and all that, I couldn't do it. I tried to, bandwagon on a few trains here and there, and I didn't feel right about it. So I would say I'm a neutral outside of Arizona sports in general. But there are teams I enjoy watching. I typically am drawn to, kind of the style that Rick Schantz has implemented here in Phoenix this season, the aesthetically pleasing pass and move, offensive oriented soccer. So, I mean, I really have always enjoyed watching Pep Guardiola's teams. It's also really fun now to watch Jurgen Klopp and sort of see how his Liverpool team faces off with Manchester City. And looking domestically, watching LAFC under Bob Bradley has been absolutely fantastic to see what he's done with the team. And then one more, a coach that I'm a big fan of, Jesse Marsch. There's just a piece that dropped from Paul Tenorio on The Athletic, a feature on Jesse Marsch, who's the first American coach to ever coach in the Champions League. And his RB Salzburg team just beat Genk the other day, a couple days ago or yesterday. I don't remember when it was. And so he's another a real role model. I think the way he approaches leadership and the game and coaching and tactics as well. Those are all things that I really appreciate. So Jesse Marsch, is definitely on my my list of guys that I'll watch his teams no matter where he goes.
So it sounds like you're a guy that kind of picks your teams based on the coaching style and the tactics, and that certainly makes sense. So might I recommend John Coleman and Accrington Stanley?
Go for it. Send me some film. We'll get it done.
Well, that was the recommendation. You got it. You like finding some film on that, actually, because I don't know. Well, that's probably something we need to talk about later, isn't it, Phil? The iFollow issues. But anyway, we've sorted that out. We're talking about you tonight, Joe. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Rambo Day. Yes, we're talking first boots, blood on the pitch, if you will. We're not talking about blood on the pitch. We don't want to talk about that. Because did you know that Rambo is from Arizona? And as such, we're celebrating Rambo Day here and across the pitch. As such, we've got all guns ablaze. We've got a big hitting guest to boot. We're going to launch our rockets and get right into it. This should be a blast.
And so instead of John Rambo, we've got Joe Rambo.
Ah, perfect. Love it.
So to get things started, let's jump into the MLS. Now we talked about your writing on The Athletic a little bit, and the MLS is certainly something that you do on there. And right now, in both the Eastern and the Western Conference, we have some really tight races for the, I would say, the second through seventh playoff positions in both of those conferences. So let's go ahead and start in the East and tell us, one, who do you think is your favorite to come out of the Eastern Conference, and out of the playoff bubble teams, which teams do you see as in and which teams do you see as out?
As far as the eventual regular season Eastern Conference champion, I think
regular season.
NYCFC probably still has a strong hold on that spot. There obviously are a couple of other teams that I think could very well compete with them. The Philadelphia Union face off with NYCFC on the last game of the regular season, so that's a match to keep an eye on. I believe they're 5 points separated between those top two spots right now in New York and Philadelphia. It's those two teams and then Atlanta United as well, who I think could all realistically come away with the Eastern Conference title in the postseason and make it to MLS Cup. So those are the three favorites, I think, for the eventual playoff matchups. And then I actually think it might be kind of chalk in terms of the top 7 teams right now. It's the New England Revolution in that 7th spot right now. And I have a hard time seeing them with some of the offseason moves, some of the transfer deadline moves and such that they've made. I have a hard time seeing them drop or seeing Montreal or Chicago or Orlando City or even Columbus. They're all about 6 points or less off of that 7th spot. I think the Revolution are going to hold on to that spot, and we're going to see the same 7 teams that are in the playoff picture now in the East in the actual playoffs when the time comes for that.
So, Joe, talking about the New England Revolution, bad start to the year. Brad Friedel gets axed. Bruce Arena comes in, who I'm sure, most New England Revolution supporters were kind of on the fence about. What have they done? I mean, you talked about the transfers coming in. Who was kind of like the key guys they're bringing in, and what has Bruce Arena done to turn this team around?
So starting with the main player they brought in, Gustavo Bo, they brought him in from Liga MX. He's a versatile attacker who can pretty much play anywhere across the front line. He can play underneath the striker. He can play up top. He can play on the wing. So he's got lots of skill. He's a smallish guy, so low center of gravity, good on the ball, quick, good in transition. So Gustavo Bo has been a really impactful player for them since they brought him in from Liga MX earlier this year. And then another guy, Carlos Gil, who they brought in over the offseason, so before the season started. He is a creative playmaker, left-footed. He can play, again, anywhere in midfield. He's not a defensive liability necessarily, so you have the luxury of playing more of a conventional 4-4-2 and putting him in the midfield if you want, or you can stick him a little bit wider or underneath a forward. It's those guys that are kind of allowing Bruce Arena a level of flexibility in his setup that I think has really paid off well for them. So we've seen the Revolution's, attacking talent shine through, essentially. We've seen a solid defensive structure in some of these guys, Gustavo Bo, Carlos Gil, even, Diego Fagundes and, Juan Agudelo have played roles this season as well under Arena. So it's been a promising turnaround for the Revolution, and I think they could actually cause some damage in the postseason as well.
So you're saying it's not that time when they gave Chelsea a match and, almost dusted them. That was not the turnaround for the season?
Correct. Yeah, no, I think Eddie got your finger on the pulse pretty well there.
Good to know.
Do you think Arena,
Mr. Wizard over there?
Do you think Arena's experience, I mean, he's the top 1 or 2 most winningest coach in MLS. He's won a grip of MLS Cups. Do you think his experience is going to really help them out in the playoffs as far as being that team that might create some upsets, especially, as we've seen in the past, those lower seeded teams kind of get that momentum because they don't get those bye weeks. Do you think that's something that having that experience with Bruce Arena is going to be very helpful for that squad?
I do. I'm a little bit conflicted internally about what I think about Bruce Arena as a soccer coach in terms of his ability to set up a team and things like that. But it's undeniable, his experience and his understanding of how to manage a team. That's, you can't argue with that. So as a national team observer, you can look at his time with the U.S. men's national team most recently and really ask some questions about the roster construction and personnel and all those things. But ultimately, the truth is he's come in with the New England Revolution. He knows the league. He knows how to get a team into the playoffs. And in my opinion, I think he's going to do that. So absolutely, we could see that momentum carry over from the end of the season with the Revolution into the postseason and have them cause some real danger.
Right on, man.
Yep, cool. You're right, though. He does have some baggage when it comes as being a coach, especially with the non-event that was his lead up to the last World Cup, really, wasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. No,
Right,
it's a personal struggle for me for sure.
Yeah.
So I got another question for you, just specifically about the Eastern Conference, and one of the teams you mentioned being the Philadelphia Union, who are sitting in second place at 52 points, 5 off the lead. Have the Union gotten that much better, or has the Eastern Conference gotten that much worse? And I say that with this is they finished last year at 6, made the playoffs for I believe the first time on 50 points, sitting at 52 now. Last year, New York Red Bulls won the Supporter Shield on 71 points. New York City FC has 57 points. Have we seen a shift kind of from the East to the West? I mean, it seems like this is a weakened Eastern Conference than we've seen in the past.
The Eastern Conference might be weaker in the sense that there's no LAFC at the top just dominating and really, I mean, we've seen Toronto FC and Atlanta United the last couple of seasons be the LAFC of the last couple of years. And so, there's no juggernaut at the top of the conference, but I think top to bottom, or at least 1 through 7, the Eastern Conference has a definite claim to be stronger than the West. I mean, I wouldn't take the Union, Atlanta United, or NYCFC in a series versus LAFC right now. I think they could win on any given day.
Right.
But I think on the whole, the East actually still may be a little bit stronger top to bottom. You mentioned the Union as an example. I do legitimately think they've gotten better this season from last season. They brought in a new sporting director from Germany, Ernst Tanner, who has adjusted the style of play. They've given, he's given the team another dimension. They can press, they can possess, they can do. They're one of the most tactically flexible teams in the league. So I'm actually very high on the Union. I think they've got a legitimate chance to win MLS Cup, both in terms of the talent on the roster and their style of play. But on the whole, I think the top of the West is very, very strong looking at LAFC, but top to bottom, the Eastern Conference is not too shabby.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, LAFC are on 64 points. The Sounders just drew tonight. It was a miserable, dire home draw against FC Dallas, who lost against New Mexico United in the US Open Cup. That doesn't really scream talent there. Do you know what I mean?
Speaking of the Sounders, I just wanted to give a quick shout out. We've noticed that recently we've had a whole lot of new listeners come on board in Seattle, and we just wanted to give a huge shout out to our listeners in Seattle. And please send us an email at contact@acrossthepitch.com or contact us on Twitter and Facebook and let us know who you are. And if you have any questions you want to have us answer about the Sounders or anything, and thank you for supporting us, Seattle.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I tell you who doesn't support you. It's Google, because you go to the Google standings and you click, it defaults on the Eastern Conference, then you have to click on the Western Conference, then after about 10 seconds, it defaults back to the Eastern Conference, and you can't click back on the Western. It just did it again. It's so fucking frustrating, I just have to say. Sort it out, Google. Sorry, Sounders.
What do you think about Minnesota United? That's my club. Tell me. I know that you must have some things to say about them. And what has Iko Para done for their tactics? I think he's a huge guy on their back line and a big acquisition for them.
It's funny. As soon as you said Minnesota United, my mind went to that center back pairing of Iko Para and Michael Boxall. I think Opara, what he brings defensively with his range and his ability to cover ground and good aerial defending, all those things are fantastic. One of my favorite things though that we've seen from Opara and his center back partner as well is their ability to carry the ball forward in possession. Right. And that's one thing for those of you, maybe if anyone out here already follows me on Twitter, I talk about that quite a lot. Center backs making an impact in the attack. I think that's one of the evolutions that we're going to continue to see over the next 5 or 10 years in the modern game. I think we're going to see center backs have increased responsibilities in possession and in the attack. So Minnesota United, I don't think that's necessarily a focal point of Adrian Heath's, attacking philosophy or anything like that. But we've seen a number of times this season, Iko Para and Boxall sort of stride forward into the attack. And then you look at, Ronan Metenier, it's just a fantastic right back who's made, it made MLS his own this season in terms of his ability to get forward on that right side and really impact the attack, no matter sort of which winger's playing in front of him or next to him. So Minnesota United is a team that I don't know exactly what to expect from them in terms of the postseason. They're in line to make the playoffs, although, as you mentioned before, as you guys talked about, the Western Conference outside of LAFC is a bit of a mess at the moment. But they have talent. It's undeniable. Mason Toye right now, their striker, is scoring goals. He's in good form recently in the USU 23 camp as well, prepping for the Olympics eventually. So they've got talent at every level. They have talent up front, in defense, and in midfield as well. So Minnesota United, especially at home, is not a team that anybody in the West, including LAFC, is going to take for granted. I mean, we just saw that Minnesota United go into Bank of California Stadium in Los Angeles and come in with a disciplined game plan, stay compact, and they got the job done. It wasn't perfect by any stretch. LAFC still created chances like they will against any team, but they got it done, and that should scare the rest of the Western Conference come playoff time.
Yes, absolutely.
So who do you see? I mean, so both conferences are very congested, kind of moving into either the final 3 or the final 4 games, depending on which team you're looking at. In this Western Conference, second place really through 9th place, there's enough separation there that anyone could kind of just jump in depending on form. But who do you see maybe falling out that's in that top 7 right now? Which of these teams maybe has the greatest chance of missing out on the playoffs this year?
I think this is tough. I really do think it could be FC Dallas. I think Portland probably jumps in. They're currently the 8th seed, although that could change based on results tonight. Obviously, games are going on right now as we're recording this episode, so a lot can change. But honestly, I could see any of the Galaxy, FC Dallas, Real Salt Lake, any of those 3 teams dropping out. Maybe San Jose. I'm still high on Mateus Almeida's system in San Jose. I haven't been able to watch as many of their games recently. They lost 2 games in a row as of recording, so they've been in a little bit of a rough place in terms of results. But I think Almeida is a good enough coach to keep them in the playoffs. So in my mind, it's between RSL, the Galaxy, and FC Dallas. One of those 3 is probably going to make their way out, and Portland's going to leapfrog their way into the playoff field.
Who do you think is the worst team in the competition?
In the West or in both conferences?
Doesn't matter.
I mean, I think it's got to be FC Cincinnati.
Hello, Sam Dorr. Hello, mate.
Yeah, it's not a great project at the moment. I think the fundamentals are sort of being built. The building blocks are maybe starting to appear slowly. But they came into the season with a roster that wasn't constructed well enough to compete in MLS. They came in with Alan Koch as their head coach, who, I'm not especially familiar with his tactics, but from the matches I watched, it wasn't, especially revolutionary or inspiring. Had a young interim head coach, Johan Demet, who is a really great story in terms of his background in coaching a young guy who's already got some great experience. But it's been a roller coaster for them. The roster isn't great, and then you have the whole Twitter beef as well with some of the fans, which is, I guess, a little entertaining to sit back and watch.
Oh, great! I've got the popcorn out for this. Do you think that's like a cautionary tale for USL, aspiring USL clubs heading up to the MLS? Like they've spent quite a considerable amount of money getting into there. Does that mean that there's not much money to spare for players on the pitch?
I mean, that it is a cautionary tale, right? We see kind of FC Cincinnati take Minnesota United's model a little bit farther and go maybe even with a less talented roster than Minnesota United entered the league with. And for teams like Nashville, who are going to be coming up from USL, it should be a message to them to say, hey, this isn't sustainable. And if you want to continue to generate momentum as you climb from one league to the other, as you make that jump, then you need to take this roster construction process seriously and create a team that's capable of competing and bring in a coaching staff that's capable of taking those players' combined abilities and making them into more than the sum of their parts. So yeah, FC Cincinnati is the model of kind of what not to do in your first MLS season.
Well, and here's an interesting stat just to throw out there. FC Cincinnati, worst team in the league, negative 44 goal difference. LAFC, best team in the league, plus 44 goal difference. So it's kind of interesting to see that parallel together.
Yeah, you're right. LAFC obviously has big bucks behind it. Wasn't a USL squad to start with, were they? They were just like, here you go.
So
franchise.
So Joe,
I don't know what the difference is there. Do you know what I mean? It's here's a club who, FC Cincinnati until this year held all the records. Now they don't. And they probably rightly earned their place in the MLS if it was a meritocracy, which it isn't. LAFC, this was like, here's some cash. Cool, we can spend it. What does that say? And you know what? I'm getting really political and it does get me cheesed off.
Cheesed off.
What does that say to you, Joseph, about the structure of, merit through the USL to the MLS and buying your way in? Like, is this good for the game?
I mean, I don't think anyone could look at this and say, anyone on the outside of Major League Soccer owners could look at the current structure and say that this is the ideal system, right? I mean, you can't look at the closed system and realistically consider it the optimal way to run soccer in the United States. I think anyone who is both a romantic in terms of their love for the sport and just realistic in terms of what promotion and relegation can accomplish for a country, no one would look at the system we have now and say that that's the ideal. But at the same time, you have to be realistic in terms of realizing where this league has come from and where soccer in the United States currently is. You can't look at MLS past and say that, 10 years ago they were ready for pro rel, or that soccer markets around the United States were ready for that. And we may not even be ready now. There are teams like Phoenix Rising who have the infrastructure and the ability to compete at lower levels and probably still could compete at the high level. So it's not an easy issue. It's a lot of people want to make it simpler than it is, and that's great, but it's sometimes not quite possible to do that. So I'll be interested to see what happens sort of in the future, but I think we're going to be looking at the current system for a good while still.
Yeah, let me ask you just one more question on the MLS, and then we'll get on to our local USL team here. Which team in the West do you think has the best shot at eliminating LAFC in the playoffs?
Ooh, that's good. That's good. I do think I'm still maybe a little bit too high on Seattle. There are a couple other teams as well that I think could really do the damage. So Portland Timbers, if they sneak into the playoffs, the style that they play, they tend to sit deeper, not exclusively. But we saw what Minnesota United can do to LAFC with a deep block. So maybe Portland, if they can play that deep block, or if San Jose can take another crack at LAFC, they haven't been able to do the job in MLS play at least. But any given day, I think the Earthquakes are capable of pretty much knocking off anybody in this league. And then one more, sorry, there are a lot. The Galaxy. There are so many things wrong with the Galaxy's tactical setup, but at the end of the day, they have Christian Pavon and Zlatan Ibrahimovic, and that's enough. And we've seen it happen in El Tráficos before. So it really is anybody's game in the Western Conference, despite LAFC's dominance so far this year.
And it seems like the Galaxy kind of have a little bit of a hold something over LAFC's head. That's just something LAFC hasn't been able to crack yet. So I guess we'll have to wait and see, right? Depending on how these playoffs and the rest of the regular season play out.
Exactly.
Do you see anyone winning the MLS apart from NYCFC or LAFC?
I really do think that those other two teams outside of NYCFC in the East, Philadelphia or Atlanta, could 100% come through, win the Eastern Conference, and it's anybody's game in MLS Cup regardless of past regular season results. So those four teams, I think, are my favorites at the moment.
Right on. Yep, well, let's jump over down a league, whatever you want to call it. Let's move to the USL. And
you're lighting a fire under me. Oh, Matt Rambo Robards over there.
Well, you are rising tactics, so I think that being that we're a Phoenix-based show, that a majority of our fan base may be tuning in to hear this part of the episode. So let's jump in and talk about this fantastic club that is on a 20-game winning streak.
Let's do it.
All right. I'm down. So, you know what? 20-game win streak. Let's just talk about that for a bit. 21 points clear at the top of the table. Already clinched with, what have we got? 4 games left in the season, the regular season?
5, yeah.
5 games. All right, beg your pardon. Thank you for clearing that up. Rising Tactics, you would know. 5 games clear. We've already got a home final. Like, it's provided we get that far, and I think we will. I've already said so on previous shows. We're going to get that far. We're going to get to the absolute championship game, and it's going to be held in Phoenix, which is fantastic. Let's talk about the numbers on this, can we, for a moment? Like, how big a season is this? If we can relate this to Phil, maybe you might want to jump in here too, mate. How can we relate this to the most winningest season? Like, I can't think of a team as dominant in any sport in recent years.
In any sport, I mean, I would say that the Golden State Warriors of the NBA recently might be the closest in terms of US.
Sure. I mean, yeah, all right, okay.
I mean, they won 73 games one year. I noticed that's 73 wins against 9 losses. And if you were to stretch out the USL season, the Rising would be, right around that pace if you consider the draws and things.
It really has been an absolutely kind of unreal season. It seems like, in my mind, I remember the beginning of the year so clearly, where the team was really struggling to get results and to finish games and to put in these complete performances that now it seems like they put in and week out. So it's been a massive transformation. It's not like this team has just walked all over everyone from the start. Looking at what they've done now over the last 20 games, it's mind-boggling. It really is. I've never seen a streak quite like this, at least, on a team that I've been covering before. It really is absolutely, it's almost unbelievable. Like if you weren't watching it, it would be hard to believe.
Well, let's run down the stats. Okay. So, most wins by any team in the USL, most goals scored by any team in the USL, most home wins, most away wins. Is there anything I've missed? I mean, these guys are just killing it. Highest goals scored by an individual person. How does this happen? And what have I missed?
Well, then you have the all-time league records, like most goals scored. They've already exceeded that. I mean, and they also they're going to set the record for goal differential. They're on pace to set the record for most points. It's almost like I said, you have to go back to like the 27 Yankees to look at a team that has set records both individually and as a team at this pace on this continent.
Yeah, I mean, it's unheralded. I feel there hasn't been a team as dominant in the last 100 years. I can't think of anyone. Maybe the Australian cricket team of 2001, 2009. Sorry, my doorbell's ringing for some reason. I don't know if that was me too.
I thought that was the cricket sound effect.
Yeah, I think these stats are absolutely crazy. I mean, but look at where we started, Joe. You brought this up. I mean, before this streak started, we're 2-5-2. It's not the start anyone wants. A lot of people, myself included, Phil, we were wondering if Shantz was really prepared for this. Could he handle this now being the guy?
I do want to go on record as saying that I was the one guy saying give Shantz some time.
Yeah, you were. I gave him a bunch float at the beginning of the season, and I'm eating Auntie Joseph's wonderful humble pie over there.
I was asking questions, but I was also saying I think he needed more time.
Yeah.
And looking back on that now, I think it's a lot easier to remove yourself from the moment, right? And to think about sort of what was going on with the club at the time that Shantz took over full time. A lot of transition was happening, right? I mean, Didier Drogba retired. Shantz was named a full-time head coach, over the offseason and was given a chance to really take his desired style of play and implement it. And so there was risk involved, absolutely. Not only because it was his first opportunity really to take the club, and make it his own, but also because the style of play that he wants and that he molds his team into is inherently risky. And so we saw the downsides of that. We saw all the downsides of that at the early points of the season. We saw, these really unfortunate goals being given up by the other team. We saw Phoenix give up, opportunities in midfield because the players they were using were more technical than they were physical. And so as the season has gone on, we've seen now we see the benefits of that style. And so it took a while to implement, and it was understandable to criticize. It really was. And I think Rick would agree with that. He would probably preach and request patience, but at the same time, he understands that soccer is about results. And at the end of the day, that's what his job is to do. And so now that we've seen him really make this team into his own and mold it into the style that he wants, it's beautiful to watch. And I think I'm a huge fan of his. Even if I wasn't so involved covering and being around the team as I am, I think the work he's doing here in Phoenix and what the ownership and front office have allowed him to do is really, really impressive. And so I think I would love to say that that Rick Schantz will be, a member of Phoenix Rising forever, but I think he has an upward trajectory, right? And I think, I don't know, no one knows if the club will move up with him. I don't have any information on this. This is just speculation from someone who's...
Oh, and you're on the right show for that, by the way.
Yeah. Perfect. That's great to hear. But Rick Schantz is an excellent coach in my opinion, and I think he's highly regarded around the league as well. So the work he's done with Phoenix this season has been nothing short of remarkable, and it's really great that he was given a little bit of grace by some fans and by people who are interested in seeing results right off the bat, because I think we've seen it pay off.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, just while you were talking there, Joseph, I was thinking there should be a Rick Schantz chant, a song that we sing. I'm surprised there isn't. So I'm going to propose one. Okay.
I think you should. I absolutely think you should.
Will. All right.
He's been one of the most important figures, I think, in the history of this club. So it's really encouraging to see the work he's done.
Yeah. So I'm going to propose a song. I'm going to do ABBA's 1978 hit "Take a Chance," and why don't we just say, "Take a chance on me, take a chance on me." And so on. That's all. That's all I've got.
I like it, guys. I like it a lot.
I like it. That could be the new chant at the South End.
There you go. P.S. I love that it's called the South End and not the supporters area, by the way. That's great. I love that. So we're talking tactics, right, Joseph? What players were vital to making that Phoenix Rising work? Who were vital to making the tactics work there?
So I think each position that Rick Schantz and the coaching staff and the front office have, they have a specific idea of what they want from each position in terms of players' skill set. So a lot of the guys we see have been very carefully selected because they fit specific attributes and they have these skills that make the team work. So even looking at the goalkeepers, Zach Lubin and Carl Wazinski both have, I mean, neither one I don't think is exceptional with their feet, but they're both serviceable, right? So they have the ability to play out from the back, which is huge for this team. Center backs as well. You look at AJ Cochran, who's a guy that I talk about. I still don't talk about him enough, but I talk about him a lot. Left-footed center back who can break lines with his passing and get the ball forward into the attack with great precision. And so he's kind of the ideal center back, and not quite as mobile, I think, as you would like him to be, but he's definitely a solid defender and a very plus-sided attacker. The midfielders are all capable of interchanging, and they're technical, and they have to be able to win balls as well because of the nature of Phoenix Rising's press defensively. So those guys all fit sort of that mold. They all have a baseline skill on the ball, a passing ability, range, etc. And then the front line, Solomon Asante up top on the right wing is the heart and soul of this team, and anyone that you ask involved with the club will tell you that. I mean, outside of Solo, he wouldn't say that, but the rest of the players and coaches would, and front office members as well. So his ability to impact the game defensively is hugely underrated because he's this offensive, elite offensive player, but he also contributes defensively. So he's huge for them. And then Adam John and Junior Fleming as the other two main members of that front line are both extremely talented guys who have the ability to play at the highest level here in the United States and will likely at some point in their careers get back there again.
Okay, so let me go back to a player who you missed out, and one that sort of popped up on our radar probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago, right, Matt? A player by the name of Austin Ledbetter, number 16. I think he had 2 starts. It was his second start when Matt and I panned him in our halftime analysis. But he's turned around and has been nominated as one of the players of the week. Where and how did he come from? Or what is he doing differently?
Ledbetter, I think, is a really interesting case. Made his way up from FC Tucson and been in the USL before. But I think he's just a really solid guy. I think he's a solid player. I don't know. There have been games that I've watched him, and I haven't been, just to be honest, I haven't been especially impressed with his overall play. I think he's been decent in those games, but then he did just make USL Team of the Week. He had a great performance recently at right back, and so he's capable of getting forward just like any of the other fullbacks on this team. He's calm on the ball. He's good under pressure, and I think a lot of that has come through the training sessions, the style of training, exercise, and exercises and things that Phoenix Rising put their players through. They preach those things. They preach composure. They preach patience, but also, aggressiveness as well. So we see him go forward and combine with the other guys on the right side, and he's good at that. He's calm on the ball, which is a great advantage for those fullbacks for Phoenix. So Ledbetter is a really, really serviceable player, and I think it's great to see him get some recognition from USL.
Yeah, I was amazed, actually surprised. When was it, Matt? I think we were texting during the game on the weekend, and we were both remarking about how he had picked up his game. And whether it be a tactical change by the coach, he wasn't sitting back as much. He was moving forward down the right hand wing there, and he was putting balls in behind, which I love offensive football. And for me to see that, even though they didn't connect, that was impressive. That was another little bullet, I guess you could say, in the belt of Rick Schantz there. That was very impressive. I was impressed. Did I say I was impressed?
I think so.
Now, what team do you think has the best shot at ending the winning streak? Do you think it should go all the way out to the end of the season? Do you think it'll be that trip to New Mexico? What game scares you the most out of the 5 that are left?
From a narrative perspective, it would be absolutely incredible to see the streak finish out. Not that you would be able to, corral the players or coaches into telling you that, but I think the last stretch of games is going to be tough. Realistically, it just is. So you've got Fresno away, and then you've got New Mexico away, and both of those teams are excellent. Realistically, they're just both very solid teams. New Mexico, has struggled. They started out the season really well, made a great run in the Open Cup. But now they're sort of on the fringe of the playoffs. But the atmosphere they have in those home games and the field they play on is, it's not the best facilities. So that's going to be a tough away game next Saturday. And then Fresno, a couple days from now, is going to be tough as well. They're a good team that I think Phoenix has respect for and is preparing properly for. So those 2 games are going to be tough. If Phoenix makes it through either one of them, then it really is anybody's game. You got T2, Portland Timbers 2, the Monarchs, and Oklahoma City, and those teams. In USL, it's any given team on any given day. It truly is, especially away. So for the fact that Phoenix has 3 away games coming up each of the next 3 Saturdays, it's going to be tough. And I think the players and coaches know that and are comfortable. They don't want to drop points, obviously. If they do lose a close away game, it's not going to set the team back in any way. They're still going to be just as focused on making that deep run into the playoffs that everyone so desperately wants.
Yeah, I agree. Fresno, I think, is going to be a real challenge. They're 3-0 up right now against frankly, not so rigorous RGV side, Rio Grande Valley. But they are in second place. And I've got to say, they could be a threat to our run. I'm with you on this. New Mexico, definitely. I think if we get past those 2, we should be fine.
Yeah, I don't really think it matters how long the streak goes, as long as you win the cup at the end of the season. I think that if they run the streak all the way to the end of the season and they get knocked out the semifinals, it'll be a disappointment.
Right.
It was cup or bust at the beginning of the year. We came up 1 goal short last year. It's even more cup or bust now.
I completely agree. I think if this team doesn't make that run and come home with the silverware, they want the Supporters' Shield or whatever the USL equivalent of that is. They want to be the regular season champions, but at the end of the day, they also desperately want that USL Championship trophy. They losing to Louisville in the final last year, I think, has really motivated this team. Mm-hmm. A lot of the guys are back from last season. A lot of the guys who could play in the eventual final this year played in the final last season, and so they have the experience. They know what it felt like to walk off that field as the losers, right? And so they're motivated. They're focused. The focus has been extremely impressive this season in the mix of all these storylines, the dollar beer night, the massive winning streak. It's absurd. The focus that the players have shown is really admirable, and so they're hyper focused on that trophy, and anything else I think will mean that this year was ultimately a disappointment for them.
Yeah, you don't get to a 20-game winning streak without having unbelievable focus. That's the hardest part about winning 20 games in a row, is just to bring that effort. At the end of the day, players are human beings, and you're not going to have 20 games in a row when you're feeling your best, or, you didn't have something bad happen in your life that's distracting you, or, you get nicked up with an injury, and to maintain the focus, and for now over 4 months to come out and every time you take the field, walk away with 3 points. That's just something you got to tip your cap to.
Yep, agreed. Hey, so we've got a couple of players coming back in. Jason Johnson, obviously getting some game time, but Reggie is back in training. Is he going to have a place in the team, or is he just going to be like, thanks for being there, we've supported you along the way, maybe we'll sub you on at the 89th minute or something?
Just given the sheer number of bodies that are already, in contention for those wide attacking positions, in my mind, it's going to be extremely tough for Reggie to work his way back, into the regular rotation. I don't think he'll be a starter at any point throughout the rest of the year. It's absolutely possible that we see him come off the bench at some point, maybe before the 89th minute, maybe not. But just you look at the guys who are ahead of him right now. Jason Johnson got back a little bit before Reggie, as you just mentioned. Junior Flemings, Asante, Joey Calistri, all those guys have been hugely impactful. I mean, with the exception of Jason Johnson, really. They've been huge this season. And so Rick Schantz, trusts them and has an understanding of what those guys can do. And so Reggie working his way back from injury, it's going to be tough for him to find minutes realistically. And I'm sure he's aware of that. So he'll want to compete in training. And if he outperforms those guys in training, one thing that we can be sure of is that he'll get minutes. So if we see Reggie on the field, we'll know how he's putting the work in training and how much the coaching staff appreciates that.
We're running about 50 minutes here, and I know that you're a busy guy, so we're not going to take up too much more of your time. But I did have one kind of final question that I wanted to ask you here, and I thought that this was kind of the perfect question for you. If the championship game were tomorrow, and assuming that all the players on the roster were healthy and available, what would your preferred starting 11 information be for the championship game?
Ooh,
so it would definitely depend a little bit on the opposition, but that aside,
let's say it was Indianapolis.
Okay, fair enough. So that I kind of shot myself in the foot there because I haven't watched much conference this season. So I'll just kind of fluff my way through that. Well,
let's say Red Bulls too. Would that be better?
Yeah, any of those are
okay,
fine. I think I'm just overthinking.
Well, how about this? There's Indy, there's Tampa, and there's Red Bull too. I think those are kind of the three. Give us what your starting 11 would be, and then what changes you would make for each of those three opponents. That would be perfect.
Fair enough. No, that's perfect. So I think the basic starting 11 that I would tend to think of as the first choice, at least in my opinion, lineup is Zach Lubin in goal. Right. Along the back line, you've got in the center AJ Cochran on the left and Corey Whelan on the right. That's the toughest, maybe the toughest one for me is Corey Whelan or Joey Farrell.
That's a big call right there.
And I like that call.
Yeah, it's tough.
I do too.
So those guys, I mean, they're competing every day in training. And Whelan has gotten more of the minutes recently, and so that's the only reason that I'm going with him for this. Then fullbacks, Amadou Dia on the left, he's a penned-in starter, and then Mustafa Doumbouya on the right.
Iron Man.
Yeah, exactly. Dia really is the club's Iron Man. Midfield, this is I think the second toughest spot for me. Central defensive midfielder, I think James Musa is the guy still. Kevin Lambert has a definite, or Kevin, I should say. Kevin.
Yes, Kevin. Kevin.
Sorry, I can't.
Broke that. You're the one that broke Kevin.
No, that's actually, I wish that was me, but that was actually Jake Anderson for.
Okay.
So shout out to Jake on that one. He got to the bottom of that. Got the scoop for everybody. But Lambert is another guy who could absolutely fill in that role against maybe a more aggressive offensive team. Musa's a little bit better on the ball, a little bit better when he has time to survey his options. So in a game against an opponent where they sit a little bit deeper, I think Musa is definitely the guy to go with there. And then the other two central midfielders in the 4-3-3, John Baquero is, his name should be penned in, like you said, assuming everyone's healthy. And then Jose Aguinaga as well. He is the glue guy. I wrote a story about that. I'm a big fan of Aguinaga's game. He does a little bit of everything, and that's really helpful for this midfield. Finally, moving to the front three, striker, it's got to be Adam John. There's no contest there. He's been fantastic this season. Had a couple of absolutely just killer goals that have iced games. It's unbelievably impressive, the work he can do both with and without the ball. And then Asante on the right, the captain. His name is, if Amadou Dia's in pen, Solo Asante's is in bright yellow highlighter and pen and whatever else you can jazz it up with on the lineup sheet. And then finally Junior Flemings on the left. I think Flemings has been the guy who from the start of the year till now I think has impressed me the most in terms of where he began. Agreed. And what my initial impressions of him were to now. And I think a lot of that does come down to the coaching and the style of play, but also he's just a fantastic player. We've seen him with Jamaica. We've seen him with Phoenix as well. He's got a bright future. And so if we don't see Junior Flemings continue to dominate this league or to move on and move on to other adventures in his career, I think I'll be very surprised. I think he's got a ton of potential and he's just a fantastic player.
It's amazing, as you're running through that list there. Yes, that is an exceptionally talented squad, but you also have to have a look at who's on the bench there as well. So,
exactly.
Even Karl Wazinski on backup goalkeeper is now, isn't he? Alessandro Rigi, Wakasa, for example. Don't really rate Ben Spencer. I'm sorry. Ledbetter, who we mentioned already. These are great players who are not at Calistri.
Well, what about Ben Spencer, too? I mean, look at that goal he had the other night. I mean, this is a guy I don't think he has 200 minutes this year, and he's scored twice already.
And Calistri, it amazes me. The depth of talent in this squad is remarkable.
It's astounding. It really is. I mean, Peter Lee Vassal's here from LAFC, and he hasn't even really, he's had international duty and things like that, but he hasn't even really seen the field a whole lot. Right. He has played, absolutely, and he's eligible for the postseason and all that. The club has managed his minutes effectively, but he's not, this MLS guy coming in, he's not a guaranteed starter. He's still having to compete for minutes like everyone else. And that's the environment that the team wants to create. They want to create this ultimately competitive group of guys that, and your spot is never safe. That's the general mantra of this team is any given day you can be outworked in training and then you're out of the lineup. And so the bench, exactly what you guys were talking about, is the bench is absolutely as key as the starting 11. And even the guys who don't make the game day 18 play a huge role in the team's development week to week.
Absolutely. I think we've lost Mr. Wizard over there. I'm sure he'd have plenty to say.
Yeah, he says he's having some microphone issues.
Never mind. I think that has been an amazing chat. Thank you so much, Joseph, for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me on, guys. It was a blast. It's always fun to talk soccer.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this has been one of the best chats that we've had in a long time, and your level of knowledge is just amazing, and we can't tell you how much we really, really appreciate having you on the show.
So let's run over this again. How do we find you on Twitter, YouTube, the interwebs?
So you can find me on Twitter at Joe and Cleats and at Rising Tactics. You'll have access to all my writing stuff from there, so that's pretty much the easiest way to do it.
All right, man, it's been a wonderful opportunity to have a chat to you. I look forward to seeing you at the game, but you usually, I think you're pretty much hidden behind that laptop, aren't you?
Yeah, that's usually the way it goes, unfortunately. But if you guys ever see me, I don't know, dashing one way or another in the concourse or anything like that, come say howdy and we'll have a nice little chat.
All right, we will.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll look forward to seeing you at the game, and if we see you out there, we'll get you a pint next time.
Thanks so much, guys.
All right, man. Thanks for joining us.